Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Story? I'm Leilani Langdon, your host for tonight. And this is a space where we get to journey along the stories of others so that you, the audience, can be inspired to know, own, and share your story. We say it over and over again. There is power in your story. Your story matters. And so we're so excited that you're here with us tonight. We want you to go ahead and just jump on and let me know you're here. If you are part of this community, you know that we are here to empower one another, to inspire each other, to support one another. And so let me know you're here. Drop your highs, hellos. If this is your first time watching, I'm gonna need you to tell me where you're watching from so I can shout you out. It is just, I love spending Sunday nights with you guys. We get to enjoy and be inspired together, but ultimately we get to journey through each other's lives. And I love it because it's not always just about the story we're listening to. I mean, there's been so many times throughout these last two seasons where you, the listener, have been journeying through a story and you have been inspired to leave your job, or you have been inspired to do something different, or to start looking at your story in a way that you've never before. And that matters. And so go ahead and let me know you're here. Marcy, hey girl. Pam, I see you. Isabel, hi mommy, good to see you. I'm so happy you're here today. Let's see. There we go. But yes, go ahead and come on in. Let me know you're here. It's so good to see you. Now, we just celebrated Thanksgiving and my parents were here. So I am so grateful anytime they get to come. And so we're going to start with just a quick question. It's probably a question you answered a million times this weekend, but what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for this Thanksgiving holiday weekend, so to speak? Drop it in the comments. Let me know what you're grateful for. And as you're coming in, let me know you're here. But one of the things I'm grateful for was my parents. Obviously, they came down last minute and they spent the weekend with us. We had a wonderful time. And it's always so good to have grandma and grandpa in the house. And the kids had just a wonderful time. We ate good. Because you know when your parents come through, like you eat good. But I'm also grateful that we actually got to see some friends of ours we hadn't seen in a really long time. It had been about 2 years since they moved out of Illinois. And we got to spend some time with them yesterday and today. And it was so good. You know, those friends who become family, like they are just friends for life. And it was just such a blessing to experience that. But come on in again as you're coming in. Let me know you're here. Say hi. But this month, if you did not know, this month is National Adoption Month. And so I'm so excited that we get to connect and hear Denise's story tonight. You know, it's not often that we get to hear the stories through the lens of the adoptee. And so I'm just so honored to have her on. Marcy says she is grateful for life itself. Yes, I think we take for granted some of the simple things in life. And so thank you for sharing, Marcy. But I wanted to share, before we jump in, I wanted to share some adoption facts with you because I think it's important to bring awareness to things that we don't always think about, right? But did you know that 1 out of every 25 U.S. families have children that are adopted? 1 out of every 25 families in the U.S. have a child that they have adopted. There are over 122,000 children and youth waiting to be adopted who are at risk of aging out of the foster care system without permanent family connections. 122,000 children. Every year, about 23,000 children age out of the foster care system. And it's unfortunate because of this number, only 2% will go on to receive higher education. About 30% of those, of the current prison population reports having been in foster care system at some point in their lives. And so it's this next one is mind-boggling, but 81.5 million Americans have considered adoption at some point. And so 81.5 million. And so if 1 in 500 of these adults adopted, every single child waiting in foster care would have a permanent family Can you imagine that? If every one of the Americans who have considered adopted, every child waiting in foster care would have a permanent family. Isn't that absolutely amazing? And so today, as we get ready to hear Denise's powerful story, I invite you to share it with your family and friends. I invite you to continue to drop what you're grateful for, drop your hellos. But I'm going to bring Denise on because I don't want to continue waiting to hear her story. So let me go ahead and bring her on. And as usual, two things before I do that. Remember, when we have our guests, I want you to share some hand clap emojis as we welcome her on, as well as if you have a question as you're hearing her story and you're going through this journey with her and with us. If you have a question, I want you to hashtag question. At the end of the show, we will go ahead and answer those questions, but I want you to go ahead and hashtag it so we can find it as we're going. And today, I just wanted to let you know, listen, we might have a giveaway. I'm feeling a little generous, so we might do a giveaway. And so I want you to keep your ears open for that giveaway. We're going to be doing it at the end of the show, but you do have to be present and live in order to experience it. Grateful for family and for you points. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Denise in this very moment. Denise, how are you?
Hi, how are you this evening?
Good. It is so good to have you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come on. You are doing a wonderful thing here, so I am so happy to be a part of What's Your Story Live. So thanks again for the invitation.
Yes.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Denise Defoe. I am an adult adoptee. I was born and raised in San Diego, California. At birth, my name was Denise Shacole Carter. That was given to me, Janice Shacole Carter. And at the time of my birth, my mom left me in the hospital. She was during a life of drugs and incarceration. There was just a lot going on. She had already had a son. She had me when she was 23, and I learned later that she'd had a son at the age of 17. Wow. So she'd left me in the hospital, and there were drugs in my system. I was there for close to 30 days in the hospital. And after that, I was taken to foster care, and I stayed in foster care for about I was officially adopted in the summer of 1983. So I was 2.5 and I was in foster care. At the time, my parents, Fran and Emery Tolbert, the greatest gift to me, would go back and forth with with my foster mom. And they would take me on the weekends. They were in the foster to adopt program in San Diego. And at the time, a lot of the adults in our church had adopted children from a particular adoption agency named Tayari. And it is an adoption agency is no longer open, but it's an adoption agency that specifically placed African-American children with African-American families. Several families in our church at the time, 31st Street Seventh-day Adventist Church, had adopted children. And so my parents were having a little bit of challenge with conceiving their own child. So they explored adoption and talked with some of the families that had adopted and began with that program. And so on the weekends, I would go with them as an infant. And then as they got more invested in the program, the visits went through the week. And so they would pick me up. And so it was kind of the visits got longer. And so in 1983, I was officially adopted. My name was then changed from Janice Shacole Carter to Denise Lynette Tolbert. So my mom didn't like Janice. She said, I prefer the name. She said, I don't like the J. I like D. And Denise was more of a popular name back in the 80s. And so she dropped the J and added a D. And she gave me her middle name, which was Lynette. And then my last name was Tolbert. So I always knew I was adopted. There was never a time where we sat down and they said, okay, honey, you're adopted. You know, it was always a conversation. So I can't even remember how old I was told.
Wow.
how old I was when I was told. And so I'm thankful for that because it's an ongoing conversation. And I could ask questions. My parents kept everything. They had all of my case notes, all of my adoption papers, everything I could think of. They had albums in the basement for me to look at when I got older, if I had questions or whatever. And so I'm so, so thankful for that piece of my adoption as well. So as I got older, around, I would say, people always ask me, when did you realize you were adopted? And I always tell people around probably 7 or 8 years old, I would say. I remember I went to San Diego Academy, and I remember we were watching Annie in after school care. My mother's an educator, my father's an educator. And so they had long days. And so I was every day. And so I remember we were watching it on the TV VCR combination unit. I'm dating myself, but
that's all right, girl. That's all right. They'll never know. They'll never know.
Don't worry about that. But anyway, I remember Annie came on, and I remember her singing a song out of the window of the Hudson Street Home for Girls, and it was the song Maybe. And specific lyrics jumped out at me, and that's when it really hit me. There were some lyrics in the song that said, "Betcha they're young, betcha they're smart, betcha they collect things like ashtrays and art. Betcha they're good. Why wouldn't they be? Their one mistake was giving up me." And way through that song of kind of fantasizing about who her parents might have been. And as you know, she was always waiting for them to come back, right?
Yes.
And so she thought about it in her mind. She created the story of who they probably were. And I remember sitting at the TV like, oh my God, like, this is me. That's me. Like, oh my goodness, like who were my parents? I remember specifically thinking that. And I began to just really question, like, oh my goodness. And mind you, I'm 8. Okay. So I don't know how to take that back to my parents and say,
right.
My parents, I'm sad. I started crying during Annie. This song to this day makes me cry. Like, I didn't know how to articulate that to my parents. So I kept it in.
Yeah.
My parents were awesome. Like, they gave me any and everything that I needed, any and everything that I wanted. They nurtured me, they affirmed me, they provided me with anything, love, affirmation. It was a wonderful life. But if you can think about a puzzle, right? You do a puzzle and you miss one piece, right? And the picture is not complete without that one.
Right.
And so that's how it felt for me. Like, there was still a piece of me missing. There was a longing in me of, who am I? Where did I come from? And so over the years, I began to, as I got older, I began to question that more. I began to wonder, like, why wasn't I enough for my parents? Why did they want me? When that hurt stayed inside of me, that anger, that resentment, it just began to build and build and build. And as I got into middle school, that's when your identity is beginning to form. And we're talking about, who are you? Where do you come from? Your history, your legacy, your roots, all of that, and just trying to figure out who you are. And I just did not know who I was. And I had no problem telling people I was adopted. Like, people would ask, and I've met a couple people in middle school and high school who were adopted, so we kind of had that thing going. We're the adopted kids, but I didn't think about it a lot every day. Like, that wasn't just my identity, but it was a piece of me that I still had it was a void. It was a void. And I remember in high school, there were a lot of shows during the summertime. Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake and all of those.
I remember.
Shows. A lot of reunion shows and Meet My Long Lost Brother and Meet My Long Lost Sister. And I remember saying to myself, I want to go on those shows. I want to find my biological mom. I want to find maybe I have sisters, maybe I have brothers, And I remember writing down, it was one particular show. I can never remember which one it was. But at the end, there was a number that said 1-800-BIG-HUGS. And I remember writing it down. And I said, I'm going to call the number and see if they can find my long lost family. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. And so, again, I was just so angry because I couldn't understand why someone would give away their child. I couldn't understand why I wasn't enough to stop whatever was impeding their ability to be my parents. Where was my aunt? Where was my grandmother? Where were my siblings, my great-grands? Where was the family? How come there was nobody that could step in? And it's not because I didn't love my parents and they weren't the most fantastic parents ever. It's just I needed to know. I needed answers. And that wouldn't have changed anything about my life, but it just was something that most adoptees deal with at some point in their life. But at the time, I thought I was alone in feeling these feelings because I was like, I've got to be crazy. It's just me. There's no way that I have such loving parents that I'm not grateful enough to just be quiet, don't suppress these feelings, don't think about it. Just, you're fine. This is ridiculous.
And just be okay. Right.
But that's not how it works.
Yes.
That's just not how, it's not reality.
Yes.
Some people try to make it their reality, but deep down, there's still grief. There's still loss. There's still issues of abandonment. And so I would take those issues and you would see them occurring in relationships with the opposite sex and the same sex. And, I would feel like I had to prove myself to people so people wouldn't discard me. Or I'd have to break up with guys first so that you couldn't get rid of me. I'm going to get rid of you. And so things occurring in my friendship relationships as well as, relationships with guys and that sort of thing. So things were starting to kind of come out. And so I told my parents one day, I said, you know what, I think I want to find my biological family. They said, whatever you want to do, fine, it's fine. We support you, anything you want to do.
Right.
So they said, all the albums are in the basement. Do you need anything? Do you want anything? I said, no, I kind of want to do it on my own. And I didn't really want any help. I just needed to be able to think and process this because I was like, if I do this, Denise, do you know what this means? Like family that's been looking for you, or they might want you, or you might
right.
The whole thing. And so so I remember I was 17 and I went into the basement and I started looking through all my albums. And of course, I'm a social worker now. Okay, so I know paperwork, I understand the lingo, I get it. But at 17, I didn't know what I was.
Right.
Okay, whatever. So I said, well, let me start with the hospital. So I said, let me call the hospital that I was born at and see if they have again, 17. I could have asked my parents, but this looking back, I'm like, Denise, but this was what I was going through at the time.
The journey.
This is what I needed to go through to figure out myself.
Right.
So then I said, hey, my name is da 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 da. This is my birth name, blah blah blah. I have my birth certificate. I don't have my original birth certificate. California seals and original birth certificates of adopted children, and you have to go to court to get it and blah blah blah. So I have my birth certificate with my new name on it, but I don't have the original one that would have my birth name, my mom's name, my dad's name. That is what I wanted.
Yes.
So, I called the hospital and I said, hey, do you happen to have any records, anything like pediatrician, no, anything? And they said, well, we can't give you that information until you're 18. So I felt like it was a door.
Yeah.
17. Okay. It took so much courage for me to even pick up the phone to call. Right. And so I'm like, okay, thanks. Bye. So I hung up and I burst into tears because I was like, oh my God, it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. It's like, oh, so it was just so frustrating. And I said, you know what, forget it. It's not meant to be. I'll do it later. Maybe I'll call when I'm 18. And I think I was turning 18 like 6 or 7 months later, but I was just like, forget it. Right. So I went to, college and I began my journey as a social work major. And there was a particular assignment that we had to do. I think it was our junior or senior year. I can't remember. But it was our portfolio, our personal portfolio. And it was an opportunity for us to identify something in our life that brought us to this profession, that shaped us into who we are today. And I sat down and I was like, I don't know. I want to help people. I couldn't think of anything in my life, what brought me here and what shaped me. I was like, well, I'm adopted. And I always tend to use it as something. So I was like, I'll write about that. So I started typing. I was writing. I was like, yeah, my mom gave me up and she was so selfish and da-da-da-da. And I want to help people. Da-da-da-da-da. And what's going on? Typing. And then I sat back and I was like, wait a minute. I'm sitting here in college. I have had the most amazing life, the most wonderful supportive village, the best parents, the best support system. This has been a blessing for me. And it didn't hit me right then about how blessed I was through adoption. And that my mother's choice was not selfish. It was probably one of the most selfless things that she'd had to do in her life in giving her child. But it hit me sitting right there, and the whole narrative of my paper at the time changed. And
wow.
How thankful I was, and how, it was probably one of the hardest decisions she's had to make ever. And the fact that she did afforded me the opportunities that I'd been given and the blessings that I'd experienced. And so that in itself brought me, and of course it didn't happen overnight, but it brought me, it changed the whole perspective of my adoption experience. And I began to really recognize it as a blessing. And there are a lot of people that don't see that, and they there are a lot of people that do, and I'm one of
Yes.
them. And I do find that I am very blessed because of my adoption. And I, you know, a lot of the things that I experienced, I would not have experienced had that not happened. So I went to therapy, I started journaling, and the healing process began. I eventually, in my mind, forgave my mother for the decision that she had to make. And I needed to do that for me. And you didn't forgive her, you didn't speak to her, you didn't. I said, no, but forgiveness sometimes isn't about the other person. Sometimes forgiveness is for us, and it allows us to be broken from the bondage of resentment.
Yes, talk
anger.
about it. Absolutely.
And it frees us from that. And what it did for me is it freed me from the anger, resentment, and the just all of those negative feelings that I had towards her, because I put myself in her shoes. And I said to myself, what would have, there obviously was no other option, right? And so she did what she had to do in that moment, at that time, to give me a better life, to give me another opportunity, to give me what she was not able to provide for me. And she knew that. And so so in that moment, it really just really shaped who I was. And again, that paper changed everything. So I graduated from college and I went on to, I was about 25. I was 25. And I said, you know what? I'm ready. I'm feeling good. You know, I'm feeling kind of healed, feeling all right in all of this, right? So let me look again. Let me decide. I told my parents, I'm going to look again. Give me the books again. So I went and I looked and I called the hospital again. I said, I'm feeling good. Let's do this. Called the hospital. They said, oh, sorry, we get rid of records after 25 years.
No.
I was like, what's that? What?
No.
Slam. I was sad again, but I was like, okay.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what it was about these, you know, these milestone birthdays, but I was like, I just felt like I needed to do it. So anyway, that door slammed and I was unable to find the information that I needed. So fast forward 2 years, I got married with David Defoe. And we have one daughter, Dana. And Dana is 10 now. And I think when I was pregnant with her, a lot of feelings began to resurface about being adopted.
Really?
In the aspect of motherhood and preparing for motherhood. So as I was pregnant, the favorite question I get asked at the doctor is, what is your medical history? And because I'm adopted, I have none. So I don't have a history of fibroids. I don't have a history of preterm labor. I don't have a history of preeclampsia. I don't know what my mother went through. I don't know what my grandmother went through. I don't, you know, all of the genetic.
Yes.
And all, so I didn't have any of that. So it was literally a 40-week faith walk. I was like, I don't know, just test me for everything. Like, I don't know, you know. So it was very hard. It was a time where I a lot of times I thought back to my biological mother as my child was growing within me, because I could not imagine leaving her in the hospital. I thought about my mom and every kick that she felt as my child is kicking me. And I would think about those kicks. I would think about my baby shower. I would think about, you know, just preparing for delivery, preparing for who was around her. Who was there telling her, you know, Janice, you can do this. You know, don't worry about it. We got you. We'll help you. Was there anyone, you know, what was that like for her? Because I know what it was like for me. Right. And so when I delivered, I remember just being so overly emotional on top of giving birth to a child.
Of course.
Thinking about, did she hold me after I was born? You know, did she want to see me? Would that have been too hard? Like, I don't know those things. I don't have those answers. But I remember we were leaving the hospital 2 or 3 days after I gave birth, and David pulled the car around, and I remember them wheeling me down to the lobby, and I had Dana in her infant carrier on my lap. And I just burst into tears because I was like, I was thinking, like, what was that like for my mom? You know, she left the hospital without me.
Yes.
Who drove her home? Where did she go? I can tell you what my body felt like after I gave birth. I wasn't ready to rip and run no streets. So what was she doing? Did she go back? Did she go to prison? Did she go home? You know, and your whole body, your whole mind, everything is jacked, right?
Yes.
And you're leaving with no baby. So I'm sitting there about all of that, just crying. And just, man, that's deep, you know?
Yes.
And so I thought about that, and uh, it was hard. It was very, very, very hard. And, a couple of times I wanted to look again, after I had my daughter, and then just things came up and I just pushed it to the side. And about 2000, I think it was the New Year's of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I went to my girlfriend, Carmen's house. She lives in North Carolina, and about 7 or 8 of my girlfriends and I went down there to celebrate New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all her mom is one of my mentors, and she is one of the most resilient women I know. I love her to death. She just inspires me in so many ways. And so she's always pouring into all of us women just about how valuable we are and how authentic we are and how we're queens and how our stories are so impactful and how we can just reach people and teach people and love on people. It's just being in her presence is always a blessing. And so when we were standing around Carmen's kitchen one morning, she said to us, she was talking about the importance of our story and the importance of sharing our story and how we can impact other people's lives. And she said, let's go around the room and everyone just kind of tell me, like, what's your story? And I was like, oh my God, I do not have a story. Please, I have no story. I do not even know. Like, so I'm like sweating, and people are telling their stories, like, I have a story about being this and that, and I've been blessed with this and that. And it comes to me and I'm like, oh God. So I said, well, I'm adopted. She was like, okay. And I said, that's kind of my story, I guess. I said, but I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of people that are adopted, and my adoption wasn't traumatic. Like I didn't stay in foster. I wasn't bouncing around from foster care to foster home. And, I wasn't, abused, and I didn't have this terrible experience with adoption. I had a great adoption story. So who cares? Right. Like it doesn't feel significant enough to be a story.
Wow. Yeah.
That will change anyone's life, right?
Yeah.
And so she said, that's your story. She said, you have to tell your story for Dana. And when anyone talks about my child, I'm like, you're right. And I burst into tears. I was like, I gotta tell my story. I gotta tell her how much mommy loves her and why I love her so much. And so she was like, that's it. And so I decided to write my story for legacy. I decided to write my story because it's important for her to understand me. And so I didn't realize what was going to come from the story. I had no plans on being an author at all. Okay. It was never something I wanted to add to my resume. It was nothing I've ever thought about. It was like, okay. So it literally fell in my lap. So January of 2018 to December of 2018, I wrote my story. I wrote from January 2019 to April of 2019 was like the editing process. And I released my book, They Chose Me, An Adoption Story, in June of 2019.
Wow.
And it was the most
amazing,
nerve-wracking thing I've ever done. So literally putting myself out there.
I can imagine.
I was scared. I was like, what if no one likes it? What if no one reads it? What if people think, oh, this is cute, congratulations, But it ended up doing more than I thought it would do. And when I wrote my book, the only people whose opinion actually mattered to me were my parents and David. Like literally, I was like, if it passes their test, we're doing it.
We're good.
Right, we're going for it. So my parents read one of the final copies of the book, and they were in tears. They were like, this is amazing. Now, of course, your parents are always going to tell you that, right? But you had no idea that you were even going through any of this because you were so well adjusted. Your grades were good. You weren't rebellious. We didn't know you were living with all of this inside of you. And I told them that I didn't know how to tell you I'm grieving a family I don't know.
Ooh.
How do I tell that to you without feeling like I'm not grateful for everything you've given me? I'm not grateful for everything that you've done. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't know how to articulate that. And you didn't know it needed to be discussed. You didn't know that my birthdays were hard for me because that's the day that I thought was the last day I saw my mother. How do I tell you that my birthday was bad for me for many years? Because I thought about it. How do you say that? And what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? My parents are the most educated people I know, but they didn't think. They're just thinking, oh, we brought you into our family. We just want to love on you. You're so happy. We're giving you whatever we can and you need us to be without thinking about the loss and the abandonment and the grief, because
Yeah.
we just don't talk about it. And it's no fault to them, because I didn't know what to say either. But the resources back then aren't what they are now.
Now, yep.
So you see a lot of adoption agencies have adoptee support groups. And you see a lot of them having adoptive parent support groups, and you see birth parent support groups, and a lot more resources and books, and more has come out so that it provides them with the information that you're hearing more from adult adoptees who are sharing their
Yes.
say, hey, don't wait till your kid is 18 to tell them they're adopted.
Tell them. Yes.
Tell your little Black child that's in your white home that their Blackness is important and that their Blackness is celebrated. And so these are the things that these nowadays they're providing more education and more empowerment to adoptive parents to prepare them. And so after I wrote my book, it was the most cathartic thing I'd ever done. I went to therapy throughout the whole process because it was unearthing a lot of things that I thought I healed from.
Ooh.
It brought about a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts that I thought I was over. But those stories and writing them out.
Yes.
So much more. And I wasn't prepared for those feelings. I had to put it down sometimes. I said, this is too much.
Too much. Yes.
That I was not writing, because I was like, I can't do this. I can't. And for days I was like, I can't release this. But I did, and it all worked out. So in June, I released it. And people bought the book. They were very supportive. My village is awesome. It was very supportive. And people were very... they enjoyed it. And a lot of the feedback that I got was, you have to do Ancestry. And I was like, no, I'm good. I've healed. I'm real good now. I'm real good now. No, I'm fine. I'm good in my story. I'm fine. I don't need anything else. I'm good. So, I don't know, this is a cliffhanger. You got so many questions in here. We need to know. And I'm like, So then someone said, well, you just do it. And I was like, well, and again, this was fear. I didn't want to do Ancestry because of fear. I was afraid of what I would find. I was afraid that people did not want to be found. I was afraid of rejection again. And so I said, I'm not going to do it. But then I started thinking about it some more. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. And I used at least I'll know my heritage. Even if I don't connect with anyone, at least I'll know my heritage.
Right.
So I said, I'll do it. And so I did it. And in September of 2019, I got my Ancestry results back. And I matched with a first cousin that listed as a half sibling. And I said, oh my God. I was on my way, ready to go to work. And I literally lost my breath. I was weak in the knees. I screamed, I said, David. I'm actually matching with people. Like, oh, this person says this might be my brother.
My goodness.
So I looked more into it, and I'm shaking. I can't even read anymore. My eyes are blurry. And so I looked, and I realized that he was the son of my biological mom's identical twin sister.
Wow.
So we connected. I've also connected with a couple second cousins and some first cousins of my mom, and just a few other people. But that was the most significant relationship, because he was able to tell me my mom's name. Now, I'd never known my mom's name. And what I found out is that she named me after her. So my mom, her identical twin sister's name was Denise. Now, my adoptive parents did not know that. So when they changed my name to Denise, they just changed it to Denise. It wasn't because of anything. So, yeah. So I cried about that, because I was like, oh my God, she named me after her. And so they didn't name me something like something else. And so I still live within the family of Anise. But so that was amazing. He has a brother who I've become very, very close with. And we look alike, actually. And he was able to give me a lot of stories about our moms. Both of them are deceased. So my biological mom died the day after her 32nd birthday. Their mom passed away 4 months later. They are buried right next to each other.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I found all of this out through Ancestry 2 months after I released my book.
Oh my gosh.
You can imagine the amount of it was a lot. to hear
Of course.
my mom.
Yes.
Good stories and bad stories.
Yeah.
Once I got her birth date, I became Inspector Gadget. So I
Of course.
the Department of Social Security. I was able to get her death certificate. I was able to see where she was buried. I was able to see how she passed. I called the California Archives, the Department of Corrections Archives, to get her prison records.
Wow.
I asked for a picture of my mom. No one had a picture of her. I'd never seen a picture of her, ever. And people had pictures, but they couldn't find them, and someone couldn't find them, and blah blah. So it was like I felt so close, and then I never had a picture, so I was like,
yes.
The Department of Corrections, and I said, give me my mom's prison records. If there is a mugshot, send me a copy of the mugshot.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, okay, we'll look back. It's over 30 years ago she was here. We have her information. You know, if it's over a certain number of pages, we're going to charge you. I said, okay, fine.
No problem.
There's a mugshot. They said, if we have one, we'll send one. I said, okay. So I just got on vacation, and I was coming back from vacation, and I had gotten a message from the Department of Corrections, and they said, your information is in the mail. So we got off the plane. I ran to the mailbox.
Gosh.
And I opened it, and all of her prison records were there. It was about 3 pages, nothing significant, but enough to go to prison. And
yes,
at the very last page was her mugshot.
Oh my gosh.
I looked at that picture and probably cried for 4.5 hours.
Oh my.
I feel like I see it all in here. It's like bananas. So at the age of 38 was the first time I saw my biological mom's picture.
Oh my God.
And again, 2 months after the release of my book, right? So all of this is coming full circle. All of the questions,
yes,
all of the everything that's in my book is now being answered in the span of 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
So my cousins and I got really close. I said, I'm coming out January 2020. I don't care. I booked a flight like the night I got home from my vacation. Martin Luther King Day of 2020. I flew out to California. We met for the first time. Talked. It was amazing. And their stories are similar to my stories. And it was just an amazing experience. While I was out there, I said, one thing I'm going to do is visit my mother's grave. And so I called the cemetery ahead of time and asked them, because the graves are unmarked. I said, you need to show me where they are. So they showed me. I went. I'd written my mom a letter. I purchased flowers. I left the letter and the flowers on the gravestone and just wept for like 35 minutes.
Oh my!
It was such a necessary, cathartic
process.
It was the happiest, saddest, worst, best day of my life. Like it was like so many emotions. Just
of course,
and it was needed.
Yes.
So that they were there with me just to kind of walk through that, because that was their first time being there too. So it was just a very, very, very necessary experience. And, you know, just everything happened at the right time. If I'd done Ancestry 10 years ago, the people that I met would not have been enough. It would not have aligned right.
Yes.
Aligned. My healing is different now than it would have been 10 years ago.
Yes.
What they are in life would not have been. It just wouldn't have worked.
Yes.
So I truly believe in God's timing, and that things happen when they're supposed to happen.
Girl.
I am so thankful for that experience. And so to this day, we're the closest of closest. I did learn I have a sister, so I'm still looking for her.
Wow.
She was taken as a toddler, and they said she went with some family. Nobody knows where she is. So I'm on a quest to find her.
Wow.
Older brother, I believe he's in California somewhere. I'm not sure. And I have met a few people on my biological father's side. Everyone always asks me, what about your dad? And I always forget this piece, because my thing was, I had so much angst and so many questions for my mother. Because as a woman and a mother, I couldn't understand why you give up your child. So my dad, you know, it could have been a one-night stand. It could have been a John.
There were so many variables.
So it just was like, if I find it, whatever, right? But I wanted to find my mom. I needed questions answered, right? I wanted to meet and face her. If I found my dad, whatever, okay? So through Ancestry, I recognized that there were people that were matching with me, but not with my first cousins on my mom's side. So it dawned on me, these might be people on my dad's side. So I reached out to them, and we have connected as well. and we're still trying to figure out who my dad probably was. He was much older than my mom was at the time. So I think my mom was 20 and he might've been in his 40s. So he is deceased, is what I'm
gathering.
I'm gathering.
Yeah.
But still trying to figure all that out. So it's an interesting piece. I haven't met any siblings on that side. So there's still work I'm doing on that side, but
yeah,
it's been an amazing, amazing, amazing journey. And for so many years, I kept my feelings about adoption hidden because I never wanted to seem ungrateful. And people all around would always say just how lucky I was that someone took me in. But everyone's adoptees carry such a unique perspective about adoption, and each experience is so worthy of being shared. And so that's the reason why I wanted to share my story. There's no wrong story. There's no right.
Yes.
No wrong way, right way to feel. Every experience and every perspective needs to be validated, and it should be valued, right? And it helps us grow stronger on our journey. And I know the pain of adoption. I know the beauty of adoption. I walk in both and I honor both. And I feel that telling my story, adoptees have been empowered to share their own and give their own personal stories. And adoption has made me the resilient and strong person that I am today. Completely shaped, who I am. I've learned so much from this experience, from writing to presenting. I've spoken to adoptive parents. I've spoken to birth parents, and just this has propelled me into a platform that I was not ready to be on.
Mercy.
I was qualified to be on, but God is qualified, and it's
that's right.
Story. I may not be an adoption worker. I may not be an adoption social worker.
Right.
With a lot of the statistics, but I know what my story is, and I know that I can educate other people. In their own story, and so as someone who's benefited firsthand from sharing from the stories of others, I could acknowledge the significance of sharing stories. So,
Denise, I'm going to resonate Marcy's comment. Amazing story. Thank you for sharing. It's amazing because it's so powerful, the role that people have played in your life in particular, and how those individuals have inspired you to different things, whether intentionally or unintentionally, right? And so this mentor, you're in this moment and they're saying, well, what's your story? And you're sitting here literally echoing the voices and the lies that we tell ourselves, which is that our stories are not worth sharing. They're not significant. Nothing's happened, right? Nothing's happened worth sharing. But in the meantime, we're prisoners to those stories because there's so many things that have happened in our lives that need healing, or that more importantly have the ability to heal and free someone else. And so I love that you were inspired to sit down and really face your story outside of yourself, right? Because that's so different. It's one thing to know it, and it's one thing to be able to speak it, but it's so much more to like sit down with pen and paper and be like, okay, word for word, minute by minute. And so I'm so grateful for you. To the community that's listening, if you have a question, now is the moment, #question. And we do have a question, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that one up. But before we do that, and you did talk a little bit about this, but you mentioned, why would you say that sharing it has been important, and versus how you maybe saw it before?
Because someone can relate to your story. Someone can always relate to your story. Someone will always say, wow, I thought I was going through that on my own. I thought I was alone. I always felt so alone in what I'm dealing with. And I'm glad I'm not. So that's why I wanted to share my story, because I wanted to be a voice for adoptees. I wanted to empower other adoptees within their story. I wanted to be a teacher to adoptive parents. And to just encourage other people to share their stories. One thing that I always say is silence hinders healing. And when we share our stories, there is so much healing that's available to us. And when I was going through my story, like I said, I didn't feel like it was significant enough. I didn't feel like, well, there's nothing. But someone I can't even count how many people have said to me, Denise, I dealt with that, or I experienced that too, or you know what,
Yes.
my parents were cruddy parents, but I knew I could feel what you've said in that one.
Yes.
I did have great
Yes.
parents too, and I felt the same way. I felt trapped within my feelings, or you know, and so I'm like, oh wow, I thought I was alone. You know what I mean? But to hear the community of people that that the story resonates with, that shows me that there was value in my story.
Yes.
Necessary. There was a platform. There is an audience for it, and there's an
yes.
Stories. There's
Absolutely.
someone can gain from sharing our stories.
Absolutely. I love that. And you know what? I think I'd almost step out and also say that even if that audience is just us, like that's enough, right? That is enough. It is enough. We have this question here. You mentioned earlier in your story about the church that had adopted, right? Like there's a lot of families that adopted children. And so the question was this a church sponsored program?
Oh, no.
Mm-mm. Okay. So what happened? It was just so happened to be a lot of families were.
That's it.
That's powerful. It's amazing how community does that, right? It's almost like you have the power of influence, essentially, right? To continue to do that. I love it. I absolutely love it. So I did want to ask you one last question. And you said silence hinders healing. What would you say was the first step you took that you can remember towards actively healing some of those wounds?
Going to therapy.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going to therapy. So once like I said in college, once I began to reframe the narrative of being adopted, I started going to counseling on campus at Oakwood College.
Wow.
And talk about some of that, and journaling, giving voice to my feelings, validating my own feelings, you know, but being able to talk about it.
Yes.
With professionals, adoption competent therapists. It gave me more of a voice and an understanding within my own story. And it made me more comfortable talking about it. Now, I wasn't talking about it like I am now, you know, I mean, but that was not for any reason or another. I just felt more comfortable in my story and within my own skin. But I think therapy is really what opened it up, you know. And then, of course, with therapy during writing, you know, also helped.
Even more so, I can imagine. Yeah.
Pieces of me, you know, I began to learn my roots and where I'm actually from, where my family, where my lineage is. And so learning all of that was a lot, you know, it was a lot. You know, there were some people that I have had to block because they were just very toxic individuals.
Wow.
There are people that aren't interested in maintaining a relationship. And that was hurtful at first, but, you know, I had to recognize my place in their life.
Yes.
For their life, you know. And
wow.
So there are a lot of facets to all of this.
Yes.
And
but it was it's almost like you mentioned earlier, like the pieces of the puzzle began to come to, like that piece, right? That had been missing was starting to kind of come together to create the picture. I love that. Thank you so much. Isabel says, you know, thank you for sharing your story and your strength. I absolutely agree. Man, the power, the vulnerability, the authenticity, you know, this story is one that we absolutely needed to hear. And I think it's important to continue to just share that story. And so, Denise, I am gonna. I want people to know we're gonna leave it in the chat so people can know where to follow up. So, but you have a website called theychoseme.com. Yes, love it. And your book. And so today we are gonna do a giveaway because I want to give away a copy of your book to one of our audience members. And so, guys, we are wrapping up. So I need you, if you are wanting to be part of this giveaway, now is the time. You want to hashtag I'm chosen. In the comments, and I will be choosing a winner in a few minutes. But I want to, let me see if I can bring on this screen. I want to show just a picture here of your book. Let me see if I can do this without, let's see here. Can I do this? technology when you're doing things live. It doesn't always want to work with you, but we are going to make it work. Oh, has lost permission to capture your screen. Okay. That is really sad right now.
Can you share it? You can't share your screen?
Let me see. It's not letting me share it for some reason. Chrome tab. Let's see. They chose me. This might work.
Okay.
Yes, I think this.
I want to say,
yes.
My @ under my name is I want you to change it. So it's oh, there it is. Hey, that's me.
That's your book.
So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @ they chose me 2019. So it's @ they chose me 2019.
They chose me 2019, and we'll add that to the chat.
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram.
They chose me 2019.
Yes.
There we go. All right, it is shared. People know. I'm excited to give this away to one of our viewers because I know that they're going to be impacted because obviously, right, there's so much more to the story and it's in the book. So I'm excited to get my own copy and read it, and then I'm excited to give it away. But Denise, again, thank you so much for your vulnerability, your strength. And I'm excited to continue to join you on your journey as you continue this big reunion, right? Like this, to find more about you, to find out more. And so looking forward to that. All right, I'm going to send you backstage, girl, and we will talk in a little bit. Thank you again.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye. All right, guys. So, man, listen, I don't know about you, but this is one of those stories that I'm going to have to go back and listen to and sit down with a notepad, right? Because it was so powerful to hear her journey, to see the power of reframing your narrative. We've talked about this before. I just heard this quote. Let me see if my brain serves me right. I think it's Toni Morrison. He says, "We believe the story we tell ourselves." And we live out the stories that we believe. And so if so many of us are trapped by the stories we're telling ourselves, and we have the ability to reframe our narrative, to reshift, to sit and just like Denise did and say, wait a second, my life has been good. Yes, there has been hurt and there's been pain and there's validity to that, and I'm going to honor that pain, but I don't need to live in pain. I don't need to live out of that pain. I can live out of the abundance that I've been given, out of the gratitude of what I've been given. And so I'm encouraging you to re-listen. Yes, Chantal, definitely need to re-listen. So many takeaways and gems. Now I'm going to do the quick giveaway and then we'll end tonight. So we're going to do this old style. I usually have like a nice little app thing, but we ain't working with that tonight because there's a lot happening, and this is a show of Uno, which means I am production, I am graphic design, I'm all of it. So I could do but so many things at one time. All right. So here we go. I'm putting the names in, and if there was somebody here, I would have them do a drum roll because we don't have one. Let's see. Who else am I missing? I saw Jack and I believe Pam. And let's see. All right. So here we go. We have little papers in so y'all can see I am not. We are shaking it up. Shaking it up. Drum roll. All right. And the giveaway winner for tonight is Isabel Zuniga. Everybody give her a round of applause. I'm going to pull her up here. Isabel, I will DM you so that I can get your address and contact information to get you Denise's book, They Chose Me, an Adoption Story. I just want to remind you, as always, that there are ways to support What's Your Story. You can go ahead on YouTube, Leilani Langdon, What's Your Story Live. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date and to be able to rewatch and re-listen and share. You can follow my Instagram account, my Facebook account. You can also donate to What's Your Story Live on Cash App to continue to support the show as you please. We have some people celebrating. Yay! People celebrating Isabel. Yes, girl, you got the book. But I'm excited to have you back here next week where we will continue our journey. And I just wanted to also let you know, I'm so grateful for this reminder. we're coming down to the end of season 2 of What's Your Story. December 19th will be the end of season 2. But I'm excited because season 3 is already, the preparations for that are already underway. On Tuesday, I'm excited. I get to sit with, my schedule is booked for the individuals that I'm connecting with so that they can share their stories for season 3, which is going to be coming back in January. But December 19th will be the last episode of season 2. So stay tuned. There are going to be a lot more giveaways coming up as we wrap up this season. So mark your calendars for that. And as always, I just want to remind you that purpose is found in knowing, owning, and sharing your story. So the question is, are you ready to share yours? See you next week.